Hey, are you ready to turn your podcast into an authority engine and not just more content? Well, welcome to Influential Voices of Authority. This is the podcast for coaches, consultants, and experts who are ready to stop being the best kept secret and move on to being that recognized, sought after authority in their niche and become that magnetic force that attracts clients to them. I'm your host, Erik K. Johnson, podcast talent coach and media veteran. In each episode of Influential Voices of Authority, I sit down with industry leaders and visibility experts to help you uncover how they use their voice, their platform, and their message to build trust, grow their audience, and attract premium clients. Recently I did a podcast authority audit, which is where I sit down and I deep dive into your podcast to find out where your authority is leaking. And I did that for one of my clients, for Karen. And on her show, she helps um, she helps amateur athletes through inspiring stories really find that confidence and that mindset within them to not only compete, but to succeed. She shares inspirational stories of running adventures, and she helps listeners learn about the vital mind-body connection and its impact on sports and truly on your daily life. And it's a great promise. I love the promise of the show and how she promises to not just share information, but to share the stories that inspire and move people to action. It's all about stories and implementation. Unfortunately, as I was listening to her show, she did a fantastic job telling stories. They all had a point to them. They all had a little tension. They moved through really well, and we really got to know a lot about Karen through her episodes. Unfortunately, she didn't do a really good job connecting it to her offer. She is a mindset coach, and she helps not only amateur athletes but business people as well find that mindset to really connect their physical health and their mental health and connect them to reach their goals. And as I listened to her content, she made a great effort sharing stories. We got great stories and information, but we didn't get to the offer that would help us actually implement the inspiration that she was sharing. And that's the challenge that most podcasters face. You're leaning too much into your process and not enough into the implementation of your process. So when I pointed out all of these areas to Karen as we were going through her show, she kept saying, of course, yeah, why? Of course, why wouldn't I do that? And it's not about knowing what to do, but actually implementing, doing it. Your success is all about knowing where to look to find the places where your authority is leaking, but not just recognize where they're leaking, but actually doing something about it and actually implementing what you learn. We live in the most informed society in history. The information is at the tip of our fingers, whether it's a Google search or you're using AI to come up with the information. I was just driving earlier today and I was talking to my iPhone and she was giving me the exact information I was looking for. We don't lack information. People are more overwhelmed than ever because of that information, because information isn't what they're missing. They're overwhelmed because they don't have time to implement everything they're learning, and they don't have a guide who can walk with them and show them how to implement every step of the way. They're missing someone they trust to guide them. And that's what your podcast can do. It can build that trust and build that rapport and that connection. And that's why authority has become so much more valuable than expertise. People aren't looking for your expertise, they're looking for your authority, and they want you to lean in and guide them along the way. Expertise tells people what to do. We have that. Authority helps people believe that they can actually do it. Your authority, true magnetic leaders tell the stories that make others believe it's possible for them. Information fills notebooks, but implementation changes lives. And that's exactly why today's conversation with Adam Roach is so impactful and powerful. This will change your life if you lean in and let it. Many founders, they hit the wall. They want their business to reflect who they are and not just what they do. But the next step feels uncertain. How do they implement that? How do they find that success? Well, that's what Adam's work is all about. He's about helping people bridge the gap by offering a simple roadmap instead of an overwhelming playbook. He helps you implement in a very succinct and simple way. Adam believes we've moved beyond the information age to the implementation age. And if he's right, which I wholeheartedly believe he is, then the experts who become recognized authorities won't be the ones that know the most. They'll be the ones who help people implement and take the next step, which is exactly what Adam has built with his coaching business. He is here on the show today to bring practical examples and straightforward frameworks. It's less about the theories and more about the reality of shifting course, starting again, and leading with conviction. Adam is the host of I Love Coaching podcast, and he's here to share it all with you today. Enjoy my conversation with Adam Roach. Adam, it's so great to see you again. Thanks for being here.
Erik, likewise. Excited to be here. Excited to jump into this conversation that we're about to have.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with your podcast. You have a great show co-hosted with Jess. How do you use the podcast to grow your authority in the coaching space?
Well, so I want to back up first because having a co-host is a very interesting world. And I'll say it lovingly because she is an amazing individual. And for the longest time, I had a podcast before, and I actually had the I Love Coaching podcast before, and I did it solo. And I made it all about my world, my stories. And what I realized was, boy, I did it all wrong. And what I meant by that, now this is just my experience, right? I'm not saying podcast hosts are doing it wrong. I'm saying I did it wrong. Was that I didn't do it to the point where I was talking to our avatar. I was talking to our listener versus telling stories about myself that were not in alignment with what the listener wanted. And so when I brought Jess into the world, I call her the professor. She has more MBAs, she has more educational backgrounds than I could ever imagine in my life. And she's actually helped us build our blueprint. I call her the course architect too. So what we do now on the I Love Coaching podcast is we have a blueprint. It's a 4-phase blueprint on how we serve coaches and how we help them build their businesses. And we have identified a way to communicate now that is so fun. And what I mean by that is we look at our blueprint, which is, gosh, nearly 300 pages if you print it out. But what we've learned is we don't need to tell the whole story of the whole blueprint every single podcast. We can literally just go in and find a paragraph in there on a problem solution cycle that we know the listener will benefit from. And then we'll even turn those into series, right? We just had one that we just finished, and it was all about Maslow's mountain, right? Hierarchy of needs, and identifying what is the messaging that you are using, and is it aligning with your avatar? Is it too high on Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Because we all have tendencies to speak in aspirational language, but sometimes our clients, they need safety language, right? They need belonging language. And so if we're standing on top of that mountain, yelling down at our clients, hey, you too can get up here, that isn't going to land. So the question with Jess is what do we do on our podcast? And that's what we do now. We get to serve them and step into the space of identifying where do they have needs that we can step in and articulate from our own IP stuff.
Yeah, I saw that Maslow series. It was like 7 episodes or something like that.
Yeah.
So what's the call to action in there? Like, how do you build your authority in there? What sort of stories are you sharing that are attracting your ideal clients into your world?
Yeah. Well, knowing that I am my avatar, right? So that's the fun part is I also coach and I still coach one-on-one. I still have clearly our I Love Coaching community. But what we'll do is we'll tell the anecdotal stories, right? We'll tell the stories on where I made the mistakes. We'll tell the stories on where we've had success. Jess also coaches, so she has her own brand. It's called Big Ideas Made Simple. And so we will step into and simply just from storytelling time, tell where we made mistakes, tell where we had successes, tell our journey through those processes. And boy, I almost feel like sometimes, Erik, I have more failures than I do successes. But hey, I think that's all part of the game, right? And authority is just this. I look at that. That word is so unique because I don't believe we're in an information age anymore. Right? I think that that world has passed us. That was 10 years ago. Where we look at where we are, I mean, because information is everywhere now. We're in an implementation age, I believe. And so that word authority is an interesting word because there's so much information out there that, and we always give credit where credit's due, i.e., the Maslow mountain. That's not the Adam Roach mountain. That's not the Jess Weber mountain. That is Maslow's. And we will give credit where credit's due. But here's the thing that I want our listeners to hear right now is it's okay to go out and share knowledge that could have come from somewhere else, but the listener who is listening listens to you as the authority there because you are authoring that information at that point in time. And I don't know who Maslow is, but they may know who Adam Roach is, and they may be able to reach out to me faster than they can reach out to a Maslow, right? And so that's how we start to build our authority in that space is we author that stuff. We will step in there and we will share where we failed with this, where we've succeeded with this, where we've learned this before. I mean, heck, I've got these books behind me and every single one of them I've read countless times. Every single one of them is signed because I wanted to go meet the author. Some of them have coached me personally, these authors behind me, but I will use a lot of my information from them out into the world. It's their information, but I'm authoring it at that moment in time. And so that's how we build our authority.
That's fascinating because moving from the information age to the implementation age, I'm a big proponent that information alone doesn't create the transformation. It's the implementation that does. And now that information is readily available with AI, you can get information. I can get your 6 steps to success probably faster than you can give it to me just by going into Chat GPT.
Yeah.
But how to implement that is the key to success. And I love the way that you do that on your podcast and help people take the information that is readily available to everybody, but show them how to use it, how to implement it. Hey, before we get back to my conversation with Adam, I want to pause just a second here on something that Adam just said, because I think it's one of the biggest shifts happening right now. We don't have an information problem anymore. We have an implementation problem. Your audience can find information anywhere. They can search Google, they can ask AI, they can watch endless YouTube videos. Information is everywhere. So if your podcast is simply delivering more information, you're competing with an unlimited supply of free content. Authority isn't built because you know more. Authority is built because you help people do something with what they know. You help them implement. And that's the difference between a podcast that people listen to and a podcast that changes lives. And it's exactly what I look for when I do a podcast authority audit for you, when I deep dive into your podcast to find out exactly where you're missing those authority opportunities. I'll review your podcast to see whether you're simply sharing information or you're intentionally building authority through your messaging, your positioning, your storytelling, and the actions that you are leading your audience to take. It's an incredible, powerful deep dive into your show because when your podcast moves from informing people to inspiring implementation, it stops being just content and it starts becoming a client attraction system. Let me deep dive your show. Get your podcast authority audit. You can get all the details at podcasttalentcoach.com/coaching. That's podcasttalentcoach.com/coaching. Now let's get back to my conversation with Adam. So when you pivoted from solo show to co-hosted show with Jess. Tell me about that first show and how it went and what you were feeling like. You used to run the whole thing. Now it's kind of a give and take. What was that like for you?
Oh, awful. It was awful. No, again, I love Jess, but it's one of those things where you've got to realize that if you're making, okay, again, this is all Adam Roach talk. I had to make it to the point where I knew that adding Jess to the show was an asset to the listeners. Again, it's not about me. And in the past, I'd made it about myself. Bringing Jess onto the show was just an added benefit, though I had to get out of my own way, right? I had to get out of the way of wanting to lead the show and lead the value because she is such a just a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of value that it's kind of fun because I get to now be the fun, playful, energetic storyteller, and she will go into her teaching mode, which is it's such a good dynamic now. And had I not gotten out of the way, I would have missed that value to the listeners, right? I would have selfishly sabotaged the whole thing. So that first show was not good. If I go back, actually, I don't even know when it was, so I've stopped listening. I think we're probably almost on, I don't know, getting close to episode 200, just the two of us together. And because we record one every single week, and we have now for, gosh, going on maybe 4 years.
How'd you guys meet? How did she become the co-host?
Yeah, she was connected to me through one of our coaches in our community because I love to be creative. I love to create things that are help in the efficiency and effectiveness space. And this is a total backstory. I created in the my prior years, even after my tennis world, I owned real estate franchises. But what I loved about owning real estate franchises wasn't the actual real estate. It was actually recruiting agents to come into our world. And so I created a SaaS model called Recruiting Bridge that soared in our space. And so when I wrote the blueprint, it was a creative space, a creative outlet for me to be able to literally take a process that I had used and now put it into a mechanism for other people to follow. Jess was introduced to me and I gave her my blueprint. And I don't remember how long it was. And it was very, very, what's the best word to use here? Poorly written, I'll say, because it was like, do this step and then do that step and then do this step and then do this step. You know, it's almost like a choose your own adventure type thing. And I
Very
said, hey,
rudimentary and just
very,
yeah,
yep.
yeah.
And I handed her the Google Drive and I said, yeah, have at it. If you are this, I think she has a master's degree in like course architecture. I said, if you have this education, this background, I give you 2 weeks to rewrite it. Come back and then we'll talk about what's the next steps to see if you're a possibility of being a member on this team. I kid you not, Eric. 2 hours later, she had it back to me, and that we called that version two, and version two was amazing. And I thought, all right, that was fun. You're hired, and now we're on version eight. And so
Wow.
it's been a neat process. So yep, she was connected to me through someone else. I saw her talent, I saw her skill set, and she has grown in the space, which is so neat because she didn't know anything about the coaching world. She also too was in the real estate world. And then now I've just watched her grow in this space, and the fact that she has authored our blueprints from basically 2 to 8 now. She has just dove herself into it, and she has her own coaching business now, which is so incredible.
That's pretty awesome.
Hmm.
Tell me about the how the podcast has opened some doors or created some opportunities for you. Give me a like what's the biggest opportunity that the podcast has made possible for you?
Well, it's almost like when you write a book. So my wife just finished writing her first book. She became a USA Today bestseller, which was super cool. And the neat part of watching my wife's success in that space is we will be somewhere and they will say, I read your book. And that's cool, right? These are unknown people that through the social media worlds of our lives that we live in now, they'll say, wow, I feel like I know you. I read your book. what's neat about the podcasts is is the is the education that the listeners receive. And then when they see you out in the world, like you wrote a best-selling book, will come up to you and say, that podcast that I heard was incredible, and here's how it helped me. Or we'll get emails that say, wow, Maslow series of 7, number 3 was incredible. I didn't think of looking at an avatar in that direction based on the language that you guys shared. And now we don't get a lot of those, but we'll get a good dozen or so a month, and that's so refreshing to me. Right?
Give
That is
me
so
one that really touched you, one of those emails that you received.
well. That wasn't an email. That was I was at an event in Colorado. Was it Colorado? Where was I this past? We always go out west, a group of guys, and we go ski. Where were we? Maybe Utah. I don't remember. And we were walking down just to go have lunch. And one of the guys that we were with is kind of a big group, maybe like 30 or 40 guys. He and his wife were outside swimming. And we were walking down, just going to lunch. And he was like, Adam, what's up, buddy? And then the wife said, oh, that's Adam Roach. And he said, yes. And he said, that is the guy who does the I Love Coaching podcast. And Adam, I heard that one podcast and I even gave it to my son to go listen to. I was like, wow, that was really touching, right? Because you don't know what your words are doing out there to the listeners who are hearing it. And that's why I love the podcasting language or the space stage. And I also love keynoting because those two, along with maybe going live on social media, are the highest trust building mechanisms out there. Right.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
Eric, as we look to build businesses, um, we I've watched coaches and I've watched entrepreneurs in the past go out and spend money. I mean, obnoxious amounts of money on ads, right? Lowest form of trust building out there. People aren't going to engage with you if the trust isn't there. People aren't going to buy from you if the trust isn't there. It takes 48 minutes. That's either Stanford or Harvard, one of those studies. 48 minutes for someone who doesn't know you to get to a lane of, okay, so we go from unknown to known, known to and like to trust. Trust is that space where people will start to trust you and say, wow, I want to listen to that again, or I want to buy from that person. Podcasting, take a podcast just as this. Our podcast lasts roughly about 30 minutes, and it takes 48 minutes for someone to start to trust you. And so in a podcasting space, if you're using it for the value and the benefit of other people, over time, they will start to learn more about you, start to trust you. And if they are aligned with what it is, problem solution wise, that you need to solve for them, they will eventually buy from you.
Yeah, it's doing it strategically. It's interesting that she passes it along to her son in the
Mhm.
in the story that you told in Seth Godin's Purple Cow. He talks about word of mouth, and if you want to get people to talk about
Right.
you,
Yep.
get them to remark about you, do something remarkable.
That's right.
And your 6 steps to success isn't remarkable, but sharing transformation of how people have implemented it and the results that they've achieved, that's what gets people talking. That's what starts to stir emotion and build that know, like, and trust that you talk about.
Well, we had a guy, um, we had someone from the podcast jump into a challenge that we were offering. I didn't know him from the podcast, only knew him from signing up for our challenge. We call it the Sellable Offer Challenge. And he jumped in and never saw him. Never saw him. Never showed up. These are usually live events. Never showed up via Zoom, and I didn't think anything of it. Now, once they're inside of an event that we host, sure, they're on our database, right? And then they'll get touched. They'll get an email. And about 6 months later, he calls. Well, he gets on my calendar and jumps on there. And I don't know him from Adam. And we jump on there. And Eric, he said, I just want to say thank you. I said, for? And he said, well, thank you for the value of the podcast, but thank you for the challenge. He goes, I watched every video. And for about 3 months, I battled with myself until the last podcast here recently. I don't remember which one it was, but I think it was overcoming mindset stuff. And he said, I know now that I need the community. I've been building in a silo for way too long. And the I Love Coaching community is a bunch of coaches in a big co-op type space. And I need to get out of this silo. So I'm ready to join the community. And I went back and I just had to sit down for a second. I thought, not that we have built a machine to generate revenue. We've built a machine to bring value and empower people. I sat down and I thought, wow, it worked. The machine worked. And this man, he has a calling to serve other people. Just like, I mean, that's part of our vision statement. And Erik, to watch him now stay in this space of serving people, we have a community call every Thursday, and whoever wants to jump on can jump on. And he's jumped on there the last couple of weeks, and you can just see the raw energy and excitement that he has for the avatar that he is serving. And I love to watch that. But to answer that all came from a podcast. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It's great that he actually watched all of the replays because so many people intend to watch the
Sure.
replays, but there was something inside of him that really needed that transformation, and
Yeah.
it's inspired him to watch those replays and actually do something about it, which is
Yeah.
fantastic to see.
Mm-hmm.
You've come from a variety of backgrounds with your tennis background, your real estate background, then you get into coaching. So
Right.
you're not really starting from ground zero, but you need to now build a reputation in the coaching space. When you
Mm-hmm.
first started doing that, what sort of challenges did you run into?
Well, if we look at coaching, let's just look at what coaching is first, right? I mean, coaching is, I was on a podcast and someone said, Adam, how long do you think coaching's been around? I'm like, I think the cavemen were probably coaching each other some way, shape, or form back in the day. So I think coaching's been around. We just have used that word coaching now more consistently than anything else. Because if we look at coaching as a whole, what is coaching? Well, I like to say that it is, you've got to become a real coach, REAL. And that's not an arrogant term that we use inside of our community, but it's an acronym that one of my personal coaches, John Maxwell, helped me create. And that is a relevant, experiential, authentic leader. That's what REAL stands for. And if we look at the word leader, Erik, it is someone who influences somebody. And if we look at what influence is, what is influence? Just getting someone to take action. And so when I was in the tennis world, I mean, I was teaching tennis. I was coaching people and I was getting them to take action. Let's change your grip here. Let's hit your ball there. Let's hit this volley there, right? When I got into the real estate space, I started in the space of wholesaling and flipping. Then I got into running franchises. Then I got into owning franchises. But all along the way, I had a coach who was coaching me in the business space, in the growth space, and I in turn were coaching real estate agents in the business space. Then fast forward to creating a SaaS model called Recruiting Bridge, and that was just for to my own benefit that then accidentally became an overnight success, which was incredible. But I knew that space also because I had grown our offices from 120 agents to nearly 750 agents. And so when I decided to exit all of that in 2019, because my father, who had been an Olympic swim coach, coaching had been in my life my entire time. And John Maxwell asked me a question. He says, when are you going to stop chasing success and start chasing significance? And I
Wow.
and I had
What a
to,
question.
yeah, and I had to sit with that for a second because I didn't know what it meant. Yeah, conceptually, I understand the words, but I didn't know what he was talking about. And I spoke at my father's eulogy. And I spoke at my father's funeral's eulogy, and I looked out over the crowd. And this was before he asked me that question before I went to the funeral. And the seed was planted because I looked out over the audience and I saw athletes, I saw other coaches, I saw family members, but I saw their parents. There's 400 or 500 people there. And this man came up to me and he was carrying an old school tape recorder. You remember the old ones where you put the cassette in, you push it down, you push play, right? And he brought it up and it was my dad's voice. And he said, do you realize for the last 27 years I've been carrying this around? I was like, oh, wow. And it was this guy was a breaststroker. If you know breaststroke, you go up and you come down, you go up and you go down, right? And there was a rhythm to my dad's voice saying, go, go. And he would say, if your dad's voice got faster, I knew I had to catch up to his voice because that made me go faster. He goes, I use this same method. I'm getting goosebumps telling the story. I use this same method with the people that I coach today. So I took a step back and I came back here to Charleston. We call it the beach chair moment. And the beach chair moment was I sat on the beach and I'm a spiritual guy. So I brought my Bible, brought my journal, brought sunscreen for my bald head and sat there. And I prayed. And I also, though, tried to discern the difference between success and significance. And I really understood what John was talking about because I was chasing money. I was chasing notoriety. I was chasing fame. I was chasing, this big picture of you are successful, kid, right? And what I realized that he was asking me was significance is when someone brings a tape recorder of your voice to a funeral and is using it for somebody else because John always says, if you're going to create a legacy, you better understand that the root word of legacy is legs. And there better be legs to what it is you are doing to help other people and serve other people. And so that's when I decided that it was time for me to exit that success space and step into a space of serving. And so when I look at the coaching world, coach is just that's just a terminology we use in the space of helping or serving someone, right? We are coaching people, but I didn't want to just coach people. I wanted to coach people who were serving other people, who had a calling to serve other people. And so when I looked at what my father had done and I saw all the other coaches who were in the audience that he had either helped or served, I thought there it was. I want to help people who are serving and helping other people. And Erik, to this day, we have been blessed with our community expansion to be on 4 continents serving coaches. And it's such a refreshing feeling. And they always say, what, if you step into the path of doing what you're called to do, you'll never work a day in your life. And I don't want to sound cliche. I don't work, though, any days of my life because I serve these coaches now.
That's fantastic. If you were not knowing that now, if you were to go back and start it all over again, what would you do differently?
Yeah, great question. Nothing. Because I had to feel that. I had to experience that, right? I know that I've always had a heart of helping other people, of serving other people. But somewhere along the lines, I had this, and I did this through another coach of mine who helped me identify this, that we all walk with a pose, P-O-S-E, right? We all walk with a pose. And that pose is created through an equation, right? And the equation looks like this. Where were we wounded? What was the lie we told ourselves? And what was the vow we vowed to hide that lie, right? And so this coach of mine, he said, where did your dad wound you? And I thought, where are we going with this conversation? He never wounded me. I love that man, right? And he said, no, he did somehow, some way. And let's dissect it. And so the abbreviated version was, he said, was your dad an active or passive dad? I said, don't think I understand the question. He says, well, let me ask you this. Did your dad sit you down and say, son, this is what I want you to do? I said, no. He said, okay, well, then your dad was a passive dad, which meant that you were catching what he was doing, not necessarily taught, right? So it's caught, not taught. I said, okay, that's cool. He said, what do you think the lie has been that you've been trying to cover up your whole life regarding your dad? Now, my dad was a successful coach. He was on magazine covers. He was in the Swimming Hall of Fame. He was in the Water Ski Hall of Fame. I mean, I loved watching my dad succeed. He's like, okay, well, it sounds like the lie you had been walking with was that you're inadequate. And he said, because are you on any magazine covers? Are you in any Hall of Fames? And I said, no. He said, okay. He said, what do you think the vow is that you have now tried to live by to hide that? And I said, oh, that's good. I said, well, I always have to win. I always have to succeed. I have to be at the front of the room. I have to be number one on the podium. He says, okay, therefore your pose is that you are a performance-driven dude. You're performance-driven. And he said, that's not wrong. Don't get me wrong. That is not wrong, but that is something that you don't have to be. Right? You don't have to be performance driven to have that as your identity, because that is something you are in a pose with. He says the masculine heart, not male, not female, but masculine energy, is 3 areas: adventure, what is it? Adventure, a warrior, and a lover. And I say, okay, great. He says, step into those, because that's where your heart really lives. So I wouldn't change anything, because I know I had to go through those seasons to get me to this season of serving, right? To get me to this season of being in this space of being a trailblazer for these coaches, to be the person that can get out there and say, hey, I'm just equally as good as all of you. I may have just been there and done it before, and I'm going to help expedite this process so you can define your own success and significance faster.
That's a great perspective, because you talk about your podcast and being a keynote speaker and things like that, and your dominance in tennis, and it's all that performance. It was great
Yeah.
insight. That's the power of having a coach, because they can see the forest for the trees. They're far enough back where they can pinpoint. You're too much in the daily grind of it to see some
Yep.
things, but when
Yep.
pointed out, you recognize them and you go, oh yeah. Oh, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Well, the guy with the tape recorder from your dad, so powerful. You've coached a ton of people. Who are you most proud of that might be that tape recorder moment for you?
There's so many. There are so many, Eric, that I don't even know where to begin, because it has nothing to do with me, right? What I feel that I get to do, and Jess gets to do as well, is we get to help them see, who do they really want to become? Who are they called to be? Right. I heard this Instagram reel not too long ago, and I thought it was really good, right? And just kind of paraphrasing, they were like, a fish doesn't need swimming lessons. A bird doesn't need flying lessons, right? A seed doesn't need lessons or instructions on how to grow. But if you put a fish out of water, it's going to look funny. If you put a bird underwater, it's going to look funny. If you put a seed on concrete, it's not going to grow. So the environment is what's really the most important thing. And so helping these individuals get into an environment that is conducive for them to step into a calling that they feel. My team gets really challenging with me, I'll say, because I still love to do introductory calls. I still love to do deep dive calls, because I don't want every Tom, Dick, and Harry in this coaching community. Because I do not believe, if you're chasing this for the success space, you will not last. That you're not part of our value system anyway. So I don't turn on the ad machine. I don't turn on anything that will appeal to the masses, because I don't want the masses. And so the people who have had success in our community and have engaged with the blueprint are the ones that have that heart, that they know that they're called to serve, that they know that they are the lover, the warrior, the adventurer in that space. Again, masculine energy is not male or female. It is that energy. I've seen coaches. I've seen a coach. I'll give a quick story here. There was someone who ironically heard me on a podcast, and I was a guest on this podcast. And he called me up and said, that was a great podcast, and I love what you do. I want to hire you to help me grow my mortgage company. Great. Here's what we do. And we went through the whole process, and I helped him. And I invited him to one of my events. I used to have the I Love Coaching whole life business planning summits, and I would bring in guest speakers, and we plan their life, right? Not just their business, but we plan health, wealth, relationships, spirituality, giving, leadership. And he tapped me after coming to one of the summits, and he says, hey, I want to do what they're doing. I said, okay, you want to speak? And he said, yeah, I want to speak. Now, this man had quite the history, right? He was born from a drug addict mom. He had one arm, we call limb difference, he called it. He's about 6'4", a big, large man. And I said, okay, well, let's do something here. And I said, well, here's what I want you to do. Go make a list of all the people in the space of speaking, keynoting that you think you want to either emulate and or meet one day. So we did. Made a list. Everybody from like Ed Milet to John Maxwell to Nick Saban. He went all the way down. I mean, he went for the A+ people, right out of the gate. I said, okay. And he said, I noticed something. What's that? And one of the guys' name was Damon West. Now, Damon had just spoke at the event. And he said, I really like Damon. I didn't get to meet him, but I see that he likes to wear Jordan shoes. Cool. He said, I'm going to send him one. And in the box, I'm going to write, give me 15 minutes of your time on the phone and I'll send you the other shoe. I said, okay, go for it. So he does. Damon calls him. They have a conversation. He sends the other shoe. Chris goes on to do this to hit everybody on that list except for Nick Saban. And he does. He gets to have these conversations with these guys. And he comes back to the coaching. We're still coaching one-on-one. And he says, man, this is really working. I said, we're going to plus this up. He said, what do you mean? I said, write it as a book. Because that's a system. System stands for save yourself time, energy, and money. And if you can teach people how to do this, go meet high-performing individuals, they need a playbook. Go write this as a book. That book is now an international bestseller. And he says, hey, I want to do what you do. I said, what do you want to do that I do? He says, I want to coach people. I said, great. Why do you want to coach people? He says, because I want to help people who have been where I have been in the adversity space of life. I want to help them overcome adversity. I said, great. What are you going to do? He says, I don't know. Coach me up. And so he sold his mortgage practice. And that was 4 years ago. He's now been a TED Talk speaker. He has spoken on, I think, probably at least 25 stages as an authority in the space of overcoming adversity. He's on to his second book. John Maxwell is a dear friend of his now. And it's just wild to watch him grow. You can go find him on Instagram. One hand at a time now is who he is. Chris Welton's his name.
What a great name
good.
for a guy that has one arm. What did you call it? Limb what?
Limb difference. And it was
limb
fun.
difference.
Limb difference, because in our coaching, I was like, dude, if we're gonna go down this path, you need to start using that one arm stuff more frequently.
Yeah,
like,
that's
okay.
his brand.
Yeah. So he's now, I mean, I love this man like a brother. We're still in a one-on-one coaching business, or in a relationship of that.
Yeah.
And he's impacting the world. He's impacting
That's
the world
amazing.
now. Mm-hmm.
What a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of coaches, they get started like this guy and they want to coach and they
Mm-hmm.
start coaching some people. Um, and they love coaching. They're really
Sure.
good at coaching, but they're not really good at the business part of it. They're
Right.
like, "Oh, why am I not further along than I am?" When they
Mm-hmm.
come into your world, what's the first step that somebody can take to really get their arms around the business part of coaching?
We call it the 3 Ps. It's very simple. And because you've got to look at this as, what am I building first and foremost? Right. So we have 4 phases in our blueprint. The first phase is going inside to go we call it inside to go outside. And that's mostly personal growth in that phase 1. Phase 2 is the top of the pyramid, if you will, P. And that's called proximity. What I watch people do unsuccessfully is they get in the coaching space and they say, well, I want to coach everybody. Right. Because
Heard that a lot.
yeah, I want to coach everybody and I want to help everybody and I want to teach them how to chew bubble gum, right? Whatever their problem solution cycle is.
Yeah, everybody needs what I offer.
That's right.
Yes.
And what's going to happen in that first P of proximity is, if you become a generalist, not a specialist, you are going to fall flat, right? Because if we look at the generalist space, people aren't waking up and saying, oh my gosh, I have a general problem. No, they're saying I have a special problem, right? So I need to find a specialist. And so what we do is we take them through what we call our problem solution cycle process. And that process is to get them to find where in the past have they had problems that they've created solutions for, that here comes the key, they have passion in, right?
Okay.
Don't come from your past container. We call it a container. Don't come from your past container and say, oh, I was in the real estate space, so therefore I have to coach real estate. No, it's not how that works. You go back. Rory Vaden says it best. You're most powerfully positioned to serve the person who you used to be. Go back to who you used to be in your problem solution cycles and say, I know how to overcome this because here's the solution that I've created, and I actually have a process for that. Okay. Once you can identify that you are a specialist in something, we go to proximity, because proximity is those are the people that are probably already around you, that you can build a one-on-one coaching business. And we say just get to 10 coaching clients in 90 days, one-on-one, so that you can keep the lights on, right? So you can keep the lights on. This is just to generate some revenue. And at this point in time, this is probably relationship building. That's who you find as clients, is in your relationship space. We call those,
People who already know you, right? We're not cold calling
right?
anybody.
We've
It's
got
like,
unknown, known, like, and trust. These are people that probably
yeah,
like you and will trust you. Okay. So now while you're in that proximity one-on-one space, you've identified that you're a specialist. Now the second P is build your process. Right? You get to start to build your own process, your own blueprint that you can practice with your one-on-one people. Once you build that process, now you can go to phase 3, which is what we call one-to-many. One-to-many is the peer, or the third P, the peers of your one-to-one clients. These are people that you've been working with, that now you've been going through your process with, that say, hey, who else do you know? But I'm going to put this in a one-to-many approach. Some people call it group coaching. We call it one-to-many, that can handle and learn from my process.
so
And
that could be a mastermind, group coaching, community, any
yes,
sort of
but it has to
you're
be process oriented. And here's what I mean by that.
yeah.
People don't come into the I Love Coaching community because Adam Roach is running it. No, they come into the I Love Coaching community for the blueprint, the process,
Yep.
so they can get themselves on their own time to their definition of success. Now, watch how this circle comes, even though it's a pyramid. We start with proximity. You build your process. Now you have your peers. That's phase 3. Phase 3 will come back to phase 2. Because when you have your process and you have your peers, there are peers that will say, holy cow, I need help with the process and I want it expedited. They will hire you for one-on-one. This is when you will double, triple, quadruple, I don't care, 10x your price, because those people want it expedited. People pay for compression of time.
Yep.
And people who pay attention. Hear this,
Yep.
everybody. People who pay a lot of attention.
Yes.
And that's how you build the framework for your business. But if you just go out there and kind of wing it, you're not following a model, you're not following a system, save yourself time, energy, and money system. Yeah, you're going to
Yeah.
eventually fall flat on your face and you're going to burn out.
People often charge like $47 for their membership and wonder why nobody shows up. It's
Right.
like, well, because
Yeah,
they're paying $47. Like
that's right.
you
Yeah.
you go out to eat and you're paying more than
You go to
$47. So
Starbucks, you'll spend $47, right? Yeah.
yes, yes, you will. You have an amazing tool that will help people
Mm.
identify the gaps in this entire process. Tell me a little bit about that and how people can get their hands on it.
Yeah, here's what we have found, right? We've watched coaches, successful coaches, launching coaches come into our community, and everyone thinks that they have an offer, right? And that's cool. I trust that you do have an offer, but here's the question that I would challenge you with is the offer scalable, right? Because a lot of people love to get into this space, and I've heard many times, countless times, oh, coaching is just trading your time for money. Not true. So we have what's called the Scalable Offer Scorecard. And this scorecard is a series of 15 questions that is going to take what you currently have as an offer, and it's going to give you direction on is it or is it not scalable, and how can you scale it? Because that is really, if we're thinking about coaching, if you want to be a one-on-one coach, that's great. I love that. Though the opportunity to be a one-to-many coach is where you will really build something that impacts. And so they can go to ilovecoachingco.com, right? I Love Coaching Co. Co is the community part of it. ilovecoachingco.com /scorecard. And they can go take that scorecard all day long.
Fantastic. That's ilovecoachingco.com
Yes.
/scorecard. I'll also put that at podcasttalentcoach.com /ilovecoaching, and you can find it there as well. Get your hands on Adam's scorecard and start closing those gaps between your coaching and your business, and get your hands on that. Yep. Adam, it's always great to chat with you. I love the insights that you give. I love the inspiration and the implementation ideas that you always bring to the mic. I love having our conversations, and I appreciate you being here today.
Erik, thank you for having me. Excited for hopefully this to land with some of the people that needed to hear it today. So thank you for your time.
Big thanks to Adam for joining us on the show today. Make sure you check him out over at ilovecoachingco.com. He is absolutely fantastic. And make sure you get your hands on his Sellable Offer Scorecard. You're already coaching. You're good at it. So why does the business side still feel like it's working against you? That's what the scorecard is all about. This scorecard identifies the specific gaps between your coaching business, where it is right now and where it needs to be to sell consistently, price confidently, and grow without burning out. It's 15 questions. You get your results in under 4 minutes. You can get it at podcasttalentcoach.com /ilovecoaching. podcasttalentcoach.com /ilovecoaching. That is Adam's Sellable Offer Scorecard. Get your hands on that. And big thanks to Adam for joining us today. You know, you've published all your episodes. You've stayed consistent. Your content is good. You're feeling confident about it. And yet people aren't showing up. You're not being seen as the authority in your niche. Your podcast isn't creating that level of influence or opportunity you thought it was going to when you started the show. You know, people are listening to your show, but they're not taking any action. And you sound professional, but not necessarily unforgettable. And the truth of the matter is, consistency alone doesn't create authority. It's intentional leadership that does. It's the implementation of everything that you're learning as you go through this show. So if you're ready to turn your podcast into an authority engine and not just more content, I got the opportunity for you. Would you like to move from being the best kept secret to that recognized, sought after authority? Here's your chance. Let's audit your podcast and find your gaps. I will show you not just where to look, but how to implement so that you get things done and you become that go-to expert in your niche. Get all the details over at podcasttalentcoach.com /coaching. I've recorded a video for you. It's over there that will explain everything for you and how you can step out of the darkness and into the spotlight to become that go-to expert. It's at podcasttalentcoach.com /coaching. Just head over there and get all the details. And I can't wait to audit your podcast for you. We're going to uncover your authority positioning problem. We're going to develop a plan to help you succeed. And I'll show you how I can help and support you to reach all of those goals, not only in your podcast, but in your business as well. So get your podcast authority audit at podcasttalentcoach.com /coaching. I can't wait for next week's episode for you. Next week, we're going to talk to Paul Waterboy Brown. Paul is walking across Africa. He is walking across Africa to solve the water problem. He's planting wells along the way. He's got a fascinating story. And we're going to discuss how he uses his podcast to grow his influence and move his mission forward. How he uses his podcast to powerfully connect with people who will support his mission and help the people of Africa get access to clean water. That's all on next week's episode. I can't wait to bring it to you. Until then, remember to step into your authority, and we'll see you next time.